Hello and welcome to the presentation video of results from Ireland's Labour Force Survey, or LFS, for Q1 2025. The LFS is a household survey carried out by the Central Statistics Office and is the official source for employment and unemployment estimates in Ireland. The official labour market classification of respondents to the survey is based on International Labour Organization, or ILO, concepts and definitions. And you can find out more information about the survey from our website or by contacting us at labour@cso.ie. The infographic shown in this slide shows some headline estimates for Q1. The employment rate for persons aged 15 to 64 years in Q1 was 74.7%, an increase of 0.8 percentage points from the same quarter in 2024. The unemployment rate, which is measured for persons aged 15 to 74, was 4.3%. That's up 0.2 percentage points compared with a year earlier. The labour market participation rate, measured for persons aged 15 and over, stood at 65.8%, up by 0.8 percentage points compared with Q1 last year. For young people in the labour force, that is those aged 15 to 24, employment has decreased by 1.3% to 313,400, while unemployment increased by 8.5% to 33,100. The seasonally adjusted estimates for employment, unemployment and those not in the labour force for each quarter over the past 4 years are shown in this chart. Seasonally adjusted, the number of people in employment increased by 35,500, or 1.3% on the previous quarter, while the seasonally adjusted unemployment was 114,500, down 9,200, or 7.4% from Q4 2024. The seasonally adjusted number of those not in the labour force was just under 1.5 million, down 0.9% from the previous quarter. Focusing now on the results for employment in Q1, the estimate of number of people in employment was 2,794,100, an increase of 89,000 or 3.3% compared with Q1 2024. As mentioned already, the employment rate for persons aged 15 to 64 is 74.7%. That's up 0.8 percentage points relative to a year ago. The seasonally adjusted estimate for the number in employment in Q1 was more than 2.8 million, increasing by 35,500 or 1.3% compared to the last quarter, Q4 2024. The estimated number of people who were classified as unemployed, that is, available for and actively seeking work, was 124,200, up by around 9,000 or 7.8% compared with Q1 2024, giving an unemployment rate of 4.3%, up 0.2 percentage points from a year ago. The seasonally adjusted unemployment rate in Q1 was 4.0%, which is down by 0.3 percentage points from the previous quarter, Q4 2024. Now to the total labour force, comprised of all persons aged 15 and over who are classified as either employed or unemployed. This was estimated to be at just over 2.9 million in Q1, an increase of 3.5% compared to a year earlier. The estimated labour market participation rate for persons aged 15 and over for Q1 was 65.8%, up by 0.8 percentage points from the same quarter last year. The seasonally adjusted participation rate in Q1 at 66.2% is up 0.5 percentage points compared with the last quarter, Q4 2024. The number of people in by ILO employment classification for males and females in Q1 are shown here. There were 1,470,200 males and 1,323,900 females in employment. The associated employment rates for those aged 15 to 64 were 78.2% for males and 71.2% for females. There were 65,600 males and 58,500 females classified as unemployed. The unemployment rates for males and females were both 4.3%. The number of people not in the labour force, termed inactive by ILO definition, in Q1 is shown in green. There were 642,000 males and more than 874,000 females not in the labour force. The annual change in employment classification by sex is shown here. There was a higher increase in employment in the year for women at more than 51,000 or 4.1% compared with 38,000 or 2.7% for men. Male unemployment increased 6,300 or 10.6%, while the number of females classified as unemployed increased by 2,700 or 4.8%. The number of males classified as inactive increased by 8,300 or 1.3%, while females decreased by 8,200 or 0.9%. The number of people by employment classification in different age groups in Q1 are shown here. Youth employment for those aged 15 to 24 was just over 313,000. The corresponding youth employment rate was 45.3%, down from 47.0% in the same quarter last year. Employment is highest among the 35 to 44 age cohort with more than 704,000 in employment. Unemployment was highest among the 15 to 24-year-olds at just over 33,000, giving a youth unemployment rate in Q1 of 9.5%. The age cohort within the working age population with the lowest unemployment rate was the 45 to 54 age group. The 18,500 unemployed equates to an unemployment rate of 2.7%. The annual change in employment classification by age group is shown here. Employment rose across all age groups in the year except for youths aged 15 to 24, which decreased by 3,700. The highest increases in employment were the 45 to 54-year-olds, rising by 27,800. The number of working people over 65 also rose. Unemployment rose slightly across all age groups, with the largest increase seen in the 55 to 64-year-old age cohort. Those classified as inactive increased the most among youths, while it fell for all age cohorts between 35 to 64 years of age. The number of people by employment classification and by region in Q1 are shown in the chart on this slide. While the annual change in employment classification by region is shown here. Employment was up across all regions except the Midlands region, which decreased by 1,800. The strongest increases were in the Midwest and Dublin region. The annual change in unemployed increased the most in the South East, followed by the Mid East and Midwest regions. The region with the largest decrease in unemployment was the South West. Of the 2.79 million people in employment in Q1, just over 590,000 or 21% said they worked part-time. The slide here shows the annual change in part-time and full-time work by age. Full-time work increased for all age cohorts except youths aged 15 to 24, which decreased by 11,700. The largest increase in full-time employment was in the 35 to 44-year-olds, an increase of 26,400. The same age cohort had the largest decrease in part-time employment, down 5,500, while there was also a slight decline in part-time employment for the 25 to 34-year-olds. The chart in this slide shows the annual change in employment by economic activity or NAE sector. Compared to a year ago, two sectors had a decline in employment: Sector G, wholesale and retail trade, which decreased by 8,200 or 2.6%, while Sector A, agriculture, forest and fishing, declined by 900. The highest increase was in Sector P, education, up by 21,500 or 9.3%, followed by finance and insurance of 15,600, up 11.5%, and information and communication up 14,300 or 8.1%. The estimated average number of hours worked per week in Q1 stood at 86.5 million hours, up 1.1 million hours per week or 1.2%. It's worth noting that this was lower than the annual increase in employment numbers, which was up by 3.3%. The chart in this slide compares the number of hours worked per week by economic sector for Q1 in 2024 and 25. The largest growth in the year was in education and information and communication sectors, which both increased by almost 500,000 hours, while human health and social work, as well as finance and insurance and real estate, increased by 400,000 hours each. The largest decrease was in the wholesale and retail sectors, which decreased by 500,000 hours, followed by transport and storage. The chart in this slide shows absences from work during the reference week for each economic sector as a percentage share of total employment in that sector, again for Q1 2024 and 25. Overall, the rate of absences during the reference week was 8.5% in Q1 2025, up from 7.4% the previous year. The highest rate of absences in Q1, as it was last year, was in the education sector at 13.2%, down 0.2 percentage points from last year. The rate of absences from work during the reference week increased across most economic sectors, which is the largest increase in the construction sector, up 3.7 percentage points to 10.0% in Q1 2025. The annual change in employment by working location and sex is shown on this chart. Here we can see that most of the increase in employment is for those who sometimes work from home, defined as less than half the week working remotely. This increased by just over 104,000 for males and 71,000 for females. Those who reported working usually from home or not at home increased for females but fell for males. As mentioned previously, the labour force increased by 98,900 to 2,918,300 in Q1. In terms of change in the labour force, there was a positive demographic effect of 57,700 and a positive participation effect of 41,200 over the year. And this gave rise to a slight increase in the participation rate over the year from 65.0% to 65.8%. The seasonally adjusted participation rate also increased 0.5 percentage points on the previous quarter to 66.2%. The annual percentage change in labour force by citizenship is shown in this slide. The largest total increase in labour force came from Irish citizens, up 52,700, followed by rest of the world cohort at 43,800. In percentage terms, however, this equates to an increase of 2.3% and 17.8% respectively. There was a 2.5% increase in labour force participants from the UK and a 0.4% increase from citizens in EU member states. The annual change of those not in the labour force is also shown in the slide. The estimated number of people who were classified as not in the labour force was just over 1.5 million. This was no change on last year. The potential additional labour force, that is people who would like to work but are either available but are not actively seeking work, or are seeking work but are not immediately available to begin, was 118,000, an increase of 15,600 or 15.3% compared with a year ago. The composition of those not in the labour force in Q1 is shown here. As mentioned in the previous slides, the potential additional labour force was 118,000, while there was almost 94,000 people who said they would like to work but are neither actively seeking work nor available to start work immediately. There were more than 945,000 classified as other inactive, while those who were classified as inactive and aged 75 stood at just over 359,000. Labour market slack, which comprises unemployed, part-time underemployed and the potential additional labour force, is shown in this slide here for Q1 2025 and the same quarter last year. The total for labour market slack in Q1 was 373,500 people, an increase of almost 31,000 or 9% on Q1 2024. The increase were seen across all three components of labour market slack. The NEET rate, that is the percentage of 15 to 34-year-olds not in employment, education and training by sex, is shown in this chart. The 8.4% NEET rate is the lowest rate reported for a Q1 in a series which started at 13.4% in 2024 and peaked at 22.7% in 2011. The NEET rate for males is 7.5% compared to the higher rate of 9.3% for females. However, the gap between males and females has closed since 2004, when the female rate was 17.3% compared to 9.4% for males. And so in summary, the employment rate for persons aged 15 to 64 years in Q1 was 74.7%, up by 0.8 percentage points in comparison with Q1 last year. The unemployment rate, which is measured for persons aged 15 to 74, was 4.3%, up 0.2 percentage points compared with a year ago. The labour market participation rate, measured for persons aged 15 and over, stood at 65.8%, up by 0.8 percentage points in the year. And that concludes the results presentation for the Labour Force Survey for Q1 2025. LFS quarterly results for Q2 2025 are scheduled for publication in August 2025. Thank you for watching.